Hello and welcome back to Tinker Talks Guns. Sorry it's been a while since the last video. We have had kind of a perfect storm of real life, an absorbing project, and Rain City Shooting Center closing for a change of ownership. So given our whimsical autumn weather here in the Pacific Northwest, shooting has not been a thing I could do tons of. But what I could shoot in my own backyard was a garden gun. Specifically, this garden gun. This is a bespoke, meaning one-off, garden gun shotgun. It's a single shot bolt action. It is cock on close, and there is a sliding extractor tied to the bolt to extract the empty cartridges. Now, we're calling this bespoke because YouTube does not like to admit that people can make perfectly legal homemade firearms. And this video may well get taken down if anyone other than their idiotic algorithms looks at it. But it is what it is. So, this is about 4.5 pounds. It has a 19.5-inch barrel. The barrel is because to make the quiet rifle, I had to cut the barrel off of 410 just ahead of the chamber, and this piece has been knocking around for some time. I also had some 4140 tool steel in half-hard condition, which has kind of been an firearms industry standard forever. I do have a lathe. I have grinders, as you can see, drill press, all sorts of useful tools. What I do not have is a milling machine that works, and that made this enormously harder than it needed to be. And so it's a very light, very handy, very balanced shotgun. This is the second shotgun I have ever owned that actually fits me properly, the way a shotgun is theoretically supposed to. And the stock is stained maple. So we're going to go to the tabletop and have a closer look at the details. But first, I'd like to thank my supporters on Patreon. This is very much a shoestring operation, and your contributions help more than you know. I'd also like to thank channel benefactors, those individuals and businesses who have contributed to the channel in innumerable ways. And thank you to Rain City Shooting Center. You guys were great, and sorry to see you changing ownership. So, let's move on to the tabletop and have a closer look. Okay, we're going to start by talking about the cartridge because I can't do anything normal. Bespoke garden gun, bespoke shot shells. Now these are slightly shortened 41 Magnum brass. They take about 1/10 of an inch off the end. And that is so a 41 Magnum cartridge, you cannot close the bolt on a 41 Magnum cartridge with the way the chamber is cut, and that's on purpose. Because as unlikely as it is that anybody but me or my estate will ever have anything to do with this shotgun, the idea of some yahoo sticking a 41 Magnum in it and blowing themselves up is unappealing. So what this is it is a thick leather wad, because I found that works very well with the 9mm Flaubert center fire. Over that is a charge of number 9 birdshot. And this one is secured with a cardboard overshot wad. I made a punch to punch out the wads, and works quite nicely. Good to have a lathe and tool steel on hand. So this, my first attempt, erring on the side of caution, was 3 grains of unique, and that did not yield a satisfactory velocity. It was about 430 feet per second. So for this load, I upped it to 3.5 grains of unique, and that produces a much more satisfactory velocity and allowed me to fit 135 grains of number 9 shot. But the velocity was still down around 425, 430 feet per second, which is not adequate. So I crept up to 3.5 grains of unique, which is this one, and that's better. It gets about 485 feet per second, which is still far below what I would prefer. I went to 4 grains of unique, And that produced a much more satisfactory result. It's about 585 feet per second. But I had to reduce the shot charge because half a grain of powder takes up a hell of a lot more room than a few grains of shot. And so these ones have 116 grains of number 9 shot. And that's, as I said, about 585 feet per second. And finally, my latest iteration is 100 grains of shot over 4 grains of unique with a thick cork overshot card. And this gets a velocity of 685 feet per second. So it's got considerably more poop, but noticeably less shot. So let's, we're not going to bother patterning this because this load is inadequate. Let's go pattern these two and see what kind of result we get. Okay, we're going to be patterning 2 different loads at 15 yards. Kind of windy out here today. The first is 116 grains of number 9 shot over 4 grains of unique with the cardboard overshot card partially secured by nail polish. Now these are a bit shy of 600 feet per second in the 585 to 590 feet per second range, but there's more shot. So let's see how that does. We'll be shooting at the left board for this. And of course it falls over. And the next load is the 100 grain of number 9 shot with the cork overwad, also over 4 grains of unique. These make about 685 feet per second, so they're about 100 feet per second faster. So let's see what that does to the pattern. On the right hand, and the primer did not go off and the target flew down, because of course it did. Let's try that one more time with the 100 grain load. And the primer did not go off again. And that's a nice deep indent. So, bad primer. These are, of course, 30-year-old primers. Because why would I use fresh new primers that we all know will work? All right. I'll go get that card and we'll compare it to the other one and see what we think. So as you can see, the 116 grain load puts noticeably more number 9 shot on target. And even though there was a slight aiming error on my part, you can see the minute of critter circle is well peppered. The 100 grain load at higher velocity made smaller holes, interestingly. And again, minute of critter is well peppered. The overall size, aside from flyers, is about the size of a dinner plate. And that's just about perfect at 15 yards for a garden gun. So, really happy with that result. Little bonus shooting, some clays at 15 yards with the 100 grain charge of shot. Over 4 grains of unique. Bouncing off those 4x4s and the steel, but not with enough force to concern me. I am wearing impact resistant glasses. That one I aimed a little low. Totally on me. And the last one. Lots of fun. Okay, we're modifying our tabletop format a bit to try and show the entire gun at once. This is not a long gun with a 19.5-inch barrel. it's kind of carbine sized, which is quite nice. Makes it very handy. It's very light, very well balanced. The mechanism, there's a simple bolt, obviously. Pull it back, and you can see inside this piece is a sliding extractor that is moved back and forth by the bolt. And the gun comes all the way open. The extractor comes out about that far, which allows the removal of the cartridges pretty easily. And then on closing, this section, the striker, remains back in the cocked position, having been caught by the sear. And of course, to fire it, you just pull the trigger and ready to rinse and repeat. Now, this is a very simple mechanism that is derived from the mechanism of my 9mm Flaubert shotgun. It has very, very few parts, and that's a good thing. This, what I did not do myself on this is the barrel, which I've already mentioned is cut down, the screws that hold the butt plate on, the nut that holds the stock on, and 2 springs. Now, the actual firing pin spring is cut down from a CZP01 spring that was lying around, which is a nice flat wire coil spring. And the other spring I had to fabricate, and that is the main mechanism spring, which I will show you in a minute. Now, the trigger guard's a little chunky looking. There are a lot of things I need to sort on this gun, and that is one of them. I want to make it a little rounder. That is made from denim micarta. And the micarta was hand-laid by the Chief, featured in the Chief Reacts videos and sent to me for knife handles. But I don't expect he would mind me using it for this purpose. The butt plate is similarly that denim micarta, and there will be an end piece of the same material just to protect the end of the barrel the end of the stock from chipping. As you can see, mistakes were made fitting this, so it's not a perfect job. But I'm very pleased with how this maple came out, because this was just a random piece of kiln-dried maple that was lying around. And once stained and sanded, it came out very nicely. The finish is multiple coats of lacquer. So, since if I take this apart on camera, the world will end instantly, according to YouTube, I'm going to go off camera, take this apart so I can show you the extreme simplicity of this mechanism. Oh, and by the way, the gun is disassembled by pulling the bolt to the rear, holding the trigger down, and removing the bolt. This is a necessary step in cleaning, YouTube. This is a safety issue. You need to be able to take the bolt out to properly clean and service the gun for safe operation. So let's take this apart and show you the bits. So as you can see, we have the bolt, which has its striker assembly. There is a spring in here, that flat wired spring, and the firing pin attaches to the striker handle. It's very simple. The locking lug is also 4140. It's actually a piece of the material I cut for the receiver. The bolt is 4140. The striker is 01 tool steel, as is the striker handle. Now, the locking lug was silver soldered in place and then bored for 2 8x32 screws, and then bored for the cocking handle, which has a 1/4-20 screw, and all of these screw right into the bolt body and are Loctited in place, so there's not going to be any movement there. And this being a very low-powered, low-pressure shotgun, that has proved quite adequate and up to the job of keeping things nicely locked up. You can bet I did not test fire it with the gun mounted so that the bolt could fly into my face. Underneath, it is relieved so that when it rotates the extractor, it can rotate over the nub of the extractor that engages the bolt, and that nub fits here. In this slot, when the thing is being closed. Well, when you're sliding it forward or back, it fits in here. When you rotate the bolt, it goes into this slot. So that's the bolt, very simple. Now the mechanism in this is kind of genius. Again, it's based on the one from my 9mm flow bear shotgun. So this is a spring-tempered piece of 01 tool steel, 3/32 of an inch thick. That is the main actuating spring. And cut into that and folded up is the actual sear. It is in one piece with the spring, which was, the flow bear shotgun had a pin that was staked in. But I thought that this was a more elegant solution. The trigger is just a piece of 5160 spring steel that was appropriately cut to shape. And there is a pin here being held by keeping it in frame, being held by this spring. And then over here, there is a brass loop that anchors the trigger. It's not technically necessary, but I felt better having it. And with a single torque screw here, this all comes apart. Now inside is the sliding extractor, which is a little gummy at the moment, which I need to slide back to reassemble the gun. And that is also kept in place by this spring, so when you pull the trigger, it drops it enough that it can fall out of the way and allow the bolt to be withdrawn to the rear. So a super simple mechanism, very few parts, and very few moving parts. I was quite impressed with it when I looked at it on the 9mm flow bear and decided to emulate it. Now, none of these cuts in the metal are as good as they would be if I had a working mill. I had to mill them out by a combination of drilling holes in lines and cutting with a cutoff wheel, and then hand filing to get everything kind of sorted out. And this was very labor intensive. And that's a nice way of saying it's a big pain in the ass. Now this bolt, or screw or whatever you want to call it, is screwed into a divot in the bottom of the barrel to retain the barrel. But rather than entirely trust that, even though it seemed to work great, I went ahead and JB welded the barrel into the receiver. Now at the front there is a simple bead sight. It is a bit on the short side, so you need a 6 o'clock hold on the target to actually center the pattern on the target. And at 15 yards, that is not really an issue. Basically, I set the critter circle on the target right on top of that, and it got a lot of pellets right into that circle. So that works out very nicely. So let me go off camera to reassemble this to prevent the end of civilization as we know it, and we'll wrap this up. So this project was a great deal of fun. If I stretch, I could claim that it's a practical thing, but we all know better. Now, this was simply to see if I could, and because it was fun, and keeps me out of the bingo halls. I'm very happy with the results. There are still things that need to be done. The protective piece on the end, a little bit of fussing with the interior to make sure everything is very consistent and no gaping holes. And make this maybe a little less blocky and inelegant looking. But other than that, it's basically done, and as proof of concept, it proves the concept. I was able to come up with cool loads for it that do exactly what I want. Now, those loads, yes, they could be hotted up significantly, particularly the 100 grain load of shot, which, by the way, were weirdly consistent over the chronograph. I only tested 3 loads, but the extreme spread was 3 feet per second. I have no explanation for that, except maybe the care I put into loading them. And it's very easy to load for this. It's very easy to develop loads for it, since I'm sticking to very much to the shallow end of the power pool. And of course, I can do the load development in my garage and backyard without annoying the neighbors and involving officialdom in any way. So it's been kind of a perfect project from that perspective, and I'm very pleased with how it came out and how I've been able to make it perform. And again, hotting up the cartridges would sort of violate the ethos of this, which is to be a very short-range gun for dealing with very small pests. Now, I do need to do something about the finish because I just threw cold blue on it because that's what I had. At very least, this really needs some oxbow blue or some other more permanent form of bluing. I'd be tempted to rust blue it, but I don't have the facilities to rust blue something the length of a barrel, and I'm not sure it's worth going to all the effort and trouble of coming up with that. So it's not finished, but it is working. It is working as intended, and it's a very pleasing gun to shoot. It's also hearing safe because the loudest load I've tested out this was 112 decibels, which is, a good hand clap. Several of the loads have been a bit lower than that. Now, if I can find some red dot, those loads in the 9mm Flowbear centerfire have tended to be quieter than loads using other powders. But it's all very fun and all very cool, and I'm just really delighted that I was able to put this together, and it does not feel like a bespoke scratch-built gun done in somebody's garage, nor does it feel like a professionally made gun, but it does feel solid, and it all works exactly as it should. So this one is a win. Anyway, that's what I've been up to. So I hope this finds you well. Stay safe, take care, and I'll talk to you again real soon.